Jerome Bouvier started using drugs when he was 14. He dropped out of school in grade 11 and continued on a self-destructive path. A water skiing accident put him in a wheelchair. Today, he is drug-free and willingly shares his stories to inspire young people not to go where he has been. He's the executive director of the PoCoMo Youth Services Society. He is affectionately known as the Youth Whisperer. It is my pleasure to welcome Jerome Bouvier to Studio 4 to tell us more. The Youth Whisperer.
Oh, scary, isn't it?
Very. Not as scary as being in a wheelchair suddenly.
No, yeah. It was an interesting journey. Yeah, didn't take long. It's amazing what a decision can make in a split second.
And it wasn't a good decision. And as I said earlier, you don't want kids or adults or anyone to go where you've been. But maybe that's not true.
Well, I mean, we learn from our mistakes, obviously. We hope we learn from our mistakes, right? As young people, we have that, piece of invincibility, right? And as adults as well. So we're out there, we're enjoying life, we're experimenting, we're curious, right? We're naturally curious, and when things present themselves and opportunities present themselves, we tend to take that step towards that. And we don't think, if I do this, this could possibly happen. And you're just having fun. For me, it was a younger age, and it just kept snowballing.
Well, I have friends who are 60 plus, who by the grace of God are still acting like that, but they're lucky.
Yeah.
So take me back to your first drug introduction. Where, when, why?
Well, it's, like kids are today, you're curious. I grew up in a small town outside of Winnipeg, and not much to do. So, and for me, it was kind of like trying to fit in. Where do I belong? The same kind of struggles young people are, faced with today. And so my way of fitting in was hanging out with a group of people who like to get high and, drink and et cetera. And so I just tagged along and ended up being introduced, to pot and to alcohol that way. And it just continued from there.
Pain at home, pain inside? Were you covering something up or just following along?
Just curious. I grew up in a great home, mom, dad, awesome. And, I got 4 other brothers, and, it was fine. No, it was just curious. It was just, that kind of, got to try it. The biggest thing was, where do I fit? I think the struggle.
And when did you know drugs had you big time?
Oh, when I was in my late teens, I got into the horse racing business, and my dad was into that. So I quit school and came out to BC and was racing horses at Cloverdale.
Really? Harness racing?
Yeah, harness racing. So that was my thing for, over 17, 20 years in harness racing. And I knew it was...
Were you a driver? What?
I drove, I trained, I owned, I did every aspect of the harness racing. And at that time, I was training.
Mucked out stalls?
I cleaned it, I shoveled it, I washed it off. I did everything you had to. But within that lifestyle, it's kind of like being in a school. You kind of have your own culture, your own kind of space. It's a separate little community, and so the racetrack was like that. And you did what you wanted. You raced your horses, but at the end of the day, you were partying, and that's when it kind of got crazy. And by the time I was 19. I was pretty much on my way to get into that lifestyle pretty heavily.
Not just booze?
No. I was smoking. I was dropping acid. I was, got introduced to cocaine. Got introduced to different drugs, speed, hash. You're doing anything and everything because you're just having fun at that time, right? And
the day that changed your life just a bit, what was going on?
Oh my gosh. Well, I went to California when I was, like I said, in my late teens, early 20s, and then my drug use just escalated, being in California and being involved with so many different things. And a bunch of us went down to a river in Sacramento, and we were all high, we were all having a good time, and friends of ours showed up in a boat, speedboat, and asked if anybody wanted to go skiing. So of course, why not, right? So I grabbed the rope and put on the ski, and off we went and went flying up the river doing about 50 miles an hour, and I'm high, I'm smiling, I'm waving and enjoying a good time. And the boat turned left and I went straight, and my ski caught and shot me out of my ski, and I somersaulted across the water and crashed into the rocks. and the impact of hitting the rocks crushed my spine, left me paralyzed from the chest level down. And I spent about just almost a month in a coma, and the next 5 months in the hospital.
And the first time you woke up in the hospital, that day, one you'll never forget, I'm sure.
No, it was really surreal, because it was like I woke up into this haze, this kind of foggy, grayish kind of sense, and then all of a sudden you started seeing these lights and these blinking. I have no idea what was going on, and you heard all this hustle and bustle and what was happening, and I woke up and looked around, and all of a sudden, I knew right away that something was wrong. So I woke up into this whole new world. Right.
Who told you you would never walk again?
The doctor. He was, when I got moved out of intensive care and moved into another room, he came in. I remember my mom was there, a friend of mine, and my brother was there. And he came in and sat down, and he asked me, how would you like to hear it, right? And I said, straight up. And he just looked at me and he said, you'll never walk again. Simple. And I remember just kind of like somebody kicked you in the gut. And then I said I needed some time, and my mom and my brother and friends left, and I sat there for about a half hour, and I called the doctor back, and I said, okay, what do I need to do? And been moving forward ever since.
Was there a lot of anger initially? Shame? What? Would you remember the emotions?
Yeah.
The deep emotions? Why me? Did you go through that or not?
Briefly, I think it was very, very brief. I never sat in a funk with it. By the time I got out of the hospital, I was on my way back to racing horses again. And part of it is, we talked about it earlier before we came on set, was next to me was a friend of mine who I met in the hospital, obviously. He jumped off a roof of a house into a pool at a party at 16 years old.
Invincible.
Hit the water the wrong way, broke his neck. And so now today he's a quadriplegic, can't hold a cup. And so when I met Pat in the hospital, I'm thinking, how lucky am I?
I get it. One of my best friends in university, same, quadriplegic, but he could move his hands and speak. The guy next to him in the bed next to him was neck down, but a happy guy. So my friend's thinking, gee, I'm not so bad. Like, I'll never walk again.
Exactly.
And I'll have to deal with all of that, but this guy will never be even upright. So, and if he can handle that, I can handle this.
And that was it for me. It was, it's not what happens to you, it's how you react to what happens to you. So I had a choice. I could sit there and pout and woe is me and think, oh my God, the world falling off me, or I could stand up and go, okay, literally not, but I could just say, okay, how can I react to this? And that's how I chose to react to it.
Who helped you? Did you have an angel, an anchor, someone when you did have a dark day or you didn't want to carry on? Was there someone in your life or a few people?
There was always, my brothers were always there without a hesitation, never questioned if I wanted. Like I went back to racing horses when I got out of the hospital and created a buggy to go back so I could sit on the sulky and train my own horses.
So you were the first, had to be, no, maybe not the
Pretty
first,
close,
but one of the first who ever jogged a horse, raced a horse, a harness horse,
from the
jughead,
chair.
if we can call them that.
Really? I was.
In a way, not in your chair, but in a special rig.
Right. Yeah, I was, and my brothers were always there. My mom, of course, was out, without question, the rock of all of us.
Really.
And she passed away just last year, but she was always that person that you could always rely on, and you could be there. You just knew when Mom was there, everything was okay.
She's still probably watching and wondering what you're up to. Yeah. Because as a mother, you know, you have a son, he's had this terrible accident, and now he decides he'll go back to horse racing. Oh, yeah. So now the mother, you know how we are. We're always on the sidelines, wondering what our kids are up to. And I'm sure she went through that.
She did, and the lifestyle I never took away from. I went right back to using, and I went right back to doing those things after I got out of the hospital. So I never stopped. I never missed a beat.
So in the chair, all the tragedy, all of that, you go right back.
Yeah.
So when did it dawn on you it was kind of a dumb thing to do?
Well, it dawned on me.
Could you get away from it?
It took a while. It took different incidents that happened after that. One was back in LA when I went down, flew down to LA after I got out of the hospital and hang out with some friends, and and some things happened that involved somebody breaking into a room with a gun and grabbing our drugs and going through that. And then about a year later, having to come across a friend who was strung out, going to his house and coming across his daughter who had injected, and I tried to revive her and she died at 14. So it was those things, a combination in a span of a few years, that made me kind of look and go, hold it, this is maybe not the greatest thing I should be doing here. And started to then, and now they call it, of course, harm reduction. At those times it wasn't, you didn't know what it was, but I started to cut back and reduce, look at my life, change the way I was doing things, and then...
By yourself, like gradually?
By myself, yeah.
Not just cold turkey one day?
Nope. Never cold turkey. No, I didn't cold turkey. It was slowly cutting back on the hard stuff, and then I just get high and just smoke. That would be it. And then in New York is where it changed. When I was racing horses, I was racing horses out in New York, and we were going down to Camden area and getting high, looking for some weed, and ran across a young 14-year-old young boy that was selling. And I remember looking into his eyes and thinking, what are you doing? Right? Of course, he was surviving. And all the stuff all my history just kind of flashed. All my, my friend's daughter, everything just popped up. And my buddy and I looked at each other and said, no. And that was it.
But how lucky are you as an addict, former addict, to be able to do that?
Yeah, it takes a lot of, I don't know, to be able to just step back and evaluate fast, and then to just make that decision is a tough one. It's not easy. Try to quit smoking, try all these things are really tough for people, because we become who we are by our habits, by what we do every day, and it's hard to break that cycle. But for me, it was just a matter of choice and going, okay, what can I do differently?
So you came in with big challenges and big blessings.
Well, at that time, you're facing two of them: getting hurt and then having drugs in your life. How do you take them? How do you face both of them at the same time, right? So.
You do right work. That helps, which you do, and we'll talk about that when we come back. Jerome Bouvier, Executive Director of the PoCoMo Youth Services Society. He's a musician, he's a horseman, he's a father.
Stepfather, yes.
Stepfather.
Yeah. 14-year-old son and an 18-year-old son.
How great.
Yeah.
We'll come back.